On the night of the 11th of June, 1987, Hackney and Stoke Newington went to bed knowing that they had elected the first ever black female MP to the House of Commons. This woman was Diane Abbott. It then took 10 years before we saw our first mixed-race female MP elected in the form of Una King, and 22 years before we finally saw Britain's first ever female Muslim minister, Baroness Warsi. In a society where BAME women constitute 11.6% of the English population, according to the government's Equalities Office, this begs the question, why has it taken so long for BAME women to make their mark in the world of British politics? Although there has been much progress made, with the last general election bringing the number of BAME women up to 26, there is still much work to do, as this is still only 4% of the entire House of Commons, which comprises of 650 MPs. Join me in this documentary as I investigate the key issues and opinions surrounding this topic. Whether we have enough BAME women in British politics, the importance of having BAME women in politics, some of the societal issues underlying the deficit of BAME women in British politics, and finally, what some of the solutions to this problem may be. Firstly, I sought to find out whether the current involvement and engagement of black, Asian and minority ethnic women in British politics is enough. I asked people what they thought the importance of having more BAME women in British politics is, and what the impact of this is on the next generation. Here's what I found.
26 BME women MPs in the House of Commons simply isn't enough, and it sends out a really clear message that we need to do so much more to get to a point where we achieve true equality and diversity.
If you break it down into ethnicities, you will see that black women are less represented than other groups in Parliament.
Recently we've had an increase in the number of BME women in Parliament. The Tories have actually done pretty well in that, and not just putting black women in seats where there's predominantly black areas. There are black women representing more white areas. That's something that we should encourage, because I think we kind of pigeonhole women and pigeonhole BME people that they have to represent a very specific community, and even then sometimes they don't even get that. I think it's brilliant that we've had an increase, but I think we actually have to look at other sections of kind of politics. In local government, it's known to be pale, male, stale, and in London I think that's probably not as much the case, but I think that we definitely need to do more to get black women involved in politics at the kind of lower levels, because I think everyone thinks of Parliament as like this biggest thing, this huge institution, but if you're in power in a local government, you actually have a lot of power and you have a lot of responsibilities to the people that elected you. There are far more councillors than there are MPs, and so there's far more opportunities for black women to be involved in local government.
I don't think there's enough black, Asian or minority ethnic women in politics in general, especially in the most visible places in terms of like Parliament. Obviously that's an issue because of the influence that we have over politics and policy, and being like vulnerable recipients of policy, we should be there to influence it. As much as I want more of us in political positions, it's also the fact that our story is unfinished yet, and we need to make sure that we have covered all bases on the lower ground, which helps produce the next generation of MPs.
I personally don't think that there's enough women of my colour that are in politics, because when I look on TV I just see mainly white English people, whereas like there's quite a majority of black people where I live. I know many females like me who want to do politics, but they're not being inspired to because there's not enough women that look like them, which makes it seem like us black young women are not capable. It makes it seem like there's a glass ceiling specifically for coloured women when it comes to taking higher positions in politics.
The reality is we don't have enough black and minority ethnic women involved in all spheres of politics, whether it's on a local level at local councils, on the regional level on the London Assembly for example, or the Welsh Assembly, and nationally in Parliament. I'm a councillor in Lambeth, in the heart of London, a very diverse borough, and out of 63 councillors in Lambeth, only 8 black and minority ethnic women, which, you know, in a borough like Lambeth is too little. I'm also on the London Assembly, and in a, again, very diverse city like London, the heartbeat of the UK, where our population is so large and so diverse, almost 50% diverse. There are only 2 black and minority ethnic women out of 25 Assembly members, which, you know, is just not good enough. A lot more needs to change for the UK to be more representative.
And I think it's very important that we encourage our women, you know, even though it is a women's world, we need to keep on encouraging our women, especially our black women, just to kind of just get involved and just to know that they are here to make changes, because a lot of people believe in women and a lot of people believe in faces they understand and they can relate to.
Some of these women probably don't have the confidence, you know, and the support they need. So they just think, oh, why should I? Because it's such a long journey to really reach where you want to be. That's the reason why they just don't want to bother.
Personally, working with a lot of youth kids and seeing the passion in them, there's just not enough role models in Parliament, and it's just not encouraged enough. It can be encouraged so much more in schools. Politics is not mentioned, it's not a big topic, it's something that a lot of females in general scare away from, only because they don't have a good understanding.
We also need current politicians to support and mentor the next generation, to provide them with the feedback and the ups and downs of their life in politics, because as a young woman myself, I wouldn't know what to do in certain situations, whereas those current politicians would know what to do in situations because they've been through it and they'll be able to advise us so we don't make the same mistakes as they have.
For me personally, it was a black woman that encouraged me to go to be a councillor, and without her being a councillor and, you know, assembly member, then I wouldn't have been encouraged and thought I could do it, because I've been able to look at her and see where she's gone.
Technically, it doesn't matter how many BME women are in leadership positions, as it's more so if the right BME women are in leadership positions and if they're doing their job right. I think it depends more so on how well they're doing their job. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously, you know, when it starts to get too low, I get worried. You hear it time and time and again that, you know, you look at a board or one of those high positions, those corporate positions, those, you know, really up there positions, and, you know, you think as a person of colour, as a woman, that, you know, I'm not welcome because you won't feel comfortable, people won't understand you, you're just different. And when you see someone that looks like you, it really just changes your whole perspective of like what you can be in life.
Especially for women, there's a whole nother side of sexism that is entrenched in our culture. There's a lot of middle-aged white men from Eton, from all those schools, and if you can't have anybody that you identify with running your country, there's not a lot of engagement that you'll feel with politics.
I think that's mostly because of the way politics is seen in general in Britain. It is seen as just being dominated by white males. For young women looking at jobs and looking at their careers, they're not likely to go into British politics.
The next generation now are going to be saddled with so much debt. The next generation are going to be paying so much more for university fees. The next generation probably won't be able to afford their own houses. If we can't reach out to the next generation and say this is why you should have an active interest in what's going on, we're going to see policies coming out from Parliament or from local councils that are not helping that next generation. If we don't have more BME women involved in politics, some of those young people from the next generation, a number of them BME young activists, won't be involved and won't see politics for them.
More representation of women in ethnic minorities.
Politicians should best reflect the population of society.
Black women, we do need to do more to get into those positions, if not for the sake of changing policy, but for visibility and making sure someone else who wants to be a politician knows that they can do it because XYZ is doing it, or XYZ can do it. It's actually that identification and that exposure that doesn't matter where you're from and it doesn't matter who you are, you're able to participate in how everybody lives, how you want your society to be.
People like to ask me what made me want to get into politics, and the answer has always been and will always be Diane Abbott. Seeing a black woman from London, seeing a black woman who's of Jamaican descent, seeing a black woman wear glasses, the way I just described her, you'd think I'm describing myself. I feel like if she can do it, then why can't I do it?
I think it's important to have more BAME women in politics, because I have a mixed race daughter myself. It would encourage her to get into politics herself, and she would feel like those positions are available for her.
Myself working in Parliament, I have the privilege to go to certain people if I wanted to run for positions within the Labour Party, or if I wanted to run for public office. However, there are other young girls out there who don't have the same opportunity as myself. They don't know who to go to. They don't even know like they have local councillors who they could go to for advice. And I think that as BAME politicians, more needs to be done to reach out to those young girls who are interested in politics.
When you're a person of colour, everyone knows it's a bit harder to get to where you want to get. Having more BAME women in Parliament, I believe, will impact the next generation massively. If we can get more BAME people to get involved in politics, have more of their say, eventually change will be implemented. That should make it easier for the next generation to strive for their goals, not having to come out of their houses and feel that they're going to be stereotyped or looked down in a certain way because they're not from a certain class or of a certain colour. It will be nice for the next generation to feel comfortable in their society. It's very important for our next generation so that they're able to speak out and express their views without feeling like they're going to be attacked.
We need more Asian women in British politics to represent the Asian community.
What I see from working with black and minority ethnic women is that a lot of them are so involved in politics already. They're already doing politics. They're already involved in their local communities, their local churches. They're already giving back. They're already volunteering, doing so much more. And all of that is a form of politics because some of those women on the grassroots levels are making big changes. They just don't have the title. So it's really important that we have some of those women involved in politics.
When more women have got into Parliament, policy has been more fair and looking at issues around women's pay, maternity pay. So if you have an increase of BME women in any kind of political arena, then I think you'll have an increase in people looking at issues that affect BME women.
Do you think there's enough being done to encourage more BAME females to run for positions of leadership in British politics? This is a question I asked up and down the country, and this is what I found.
I don't believe there's enough being done. I feel like their model or their approach doesn't really suit the black women's narrative. I think they're trying to find black women in places where black women are far and few between and expect them to now to get their position just because they're in that space. And they ask why they're not many black women doing certain things, but you're only going to certain places.
Political parties and big corporations have a real responsibility.
There is not enough promoted about it. Unless you study sort of politics, international relations, unless you have a link or unless you go to university, it's very hard to know how to go down that path.
Sometimes as black people we just don't educate ourselves enough to go out and actually look for these things. And I think it's because I work in Parliament, I actually see this, because before I used to be like, oh yeah, they're not doing nothing for us. When I've actually been here, I actually see the work that they do and I'm just like, okay, it's just us.
The Labour Party introduced what's called the all-women shortlist. When an MP retires or if there's a new seat being created, it's only women from that particular area that can apply for that seat. And that's really helped increase the number of women politicians on the Labour Party side. We need to be quite bold. And this has been spoken about within a number of different parties, but I think it's about time we look at maybe we should introduce all black and minority ethnic shortlists.
I think that a lot of parties talk the talk on diversity and we like to say like we've ticked that box, and I've been the kind of person that's been ticking that box, but actually once you're there, what support is there for you is quite minimal. I think there needs to be a lot more done to encourage women firstly to stand, but also encourage them to stay once they've got there. I think there's a lot of pressure on people in politics. If you're the only black person or the only BME person in the room, that pressure is actually kind of twice as much. You have to work twice as hard to get just as little credit.
Underlying these issues are many societal factors.
Our race and sex. And if you're a person of colour and a woman, then you have two different strands of discrimination to fight against.
You know, you can't talk about it, you're not allowed to, you know, you're considered to be complaining, making an issue out of nothing. To a certain extent, BME women are still seen in many communities as second-class citizens.
So one of my first experiences as a BME woman in politics was standing as a council candidate in Bexley in 2014. I was 19. One of the things that I faced on the doorsteps were people telling me that I was a sellout to my community for being a member of the Conservative Party and even thinking about standing for them. This is an attitude that needs to change. If we want the current governing party to look like us, then we need to expect that people who look like us will also stand to be members of parliament or to be in local councils. We need to realise that BME women have their own points of view. We don't all have to think the same way, but we all have to strive to make sure that we are better represented at all areas.
The women face more because being a woman, some of these women they have the children or commitment at home, and people always think that a woman's place is in the house. Even though black women are putting children on the back burner and go for a career, they're still struggling.
Cyber abuse that a lot of black female MPs in specific are experiencing. I don't think it's fair that someone should be attacked based on the colour of their skin or based on their gender. We're taught that sexism is normal. It's very hard to get your point across when you're just seen as a certain way, put in a box. It's very hard to sort of come out of that box. So for them to really speak out on such issues as a black woman in specific, or a woman of colour, is a very brave thing to do.
I gave these young girls, women and men, back the power. I asked them what would they do if they had the power to make these changes.
More leadership classes in curriculum.
Training.
Empowerment.
More mentorship.
More education.
Transforming how we see political conversations. There's a lot of black women on Twitter and we have a lot of things to say about certain things and we just think it's like Twitter chat. But if you break it down, you realise these are really big political discussions that we're having, but the platforms that we have it on and how we have them determines whether we are seen as political beings or how then we want to like have the solutions.
Using social media,
the support system,
the talks,
a network,
creating events,
the sisterhood,
and most of all word of mouth. Word of mouth is very important.
It's been done before, but has it been done correctly? Because I've never heard about it before.
Where are black people gathering and how do we gather, and then plant the seed there and be like, okay, look, we all come here to rant about this, but let's make it a more political and more formalised way of doing things.
The same way young people are encouraged to eat healthy, to stay fit, to have safe sex, I think young people should be encouraged to understand politics and to understand what happened at Parliament. I think it's very important, and you know, being able to have that out there in the open where young people can ask questions, young females can be encouraged and be able to understand what steps they need to take.
Better careers advice.
I think we need to change the rules and just mix it up.
Yeah, I believe we need to support each other.
A resource intensive mentoring scheme specifically for BME women because they face different barriers from non-BME women. It will take a lot of time, it will take money, and I think that that's the biggest barrier there, is that people aren't necessarily willing to invest in such a specific group of people. I think the benefits of investing time and resources and training and speaking to black women and BME women, it would be a huge benefit to society.
This is the time when, if these young girls really want to make it, whatever they want to do, you just have to fight, you know. Once you put your mind to something, you just go for it, because the opportunity is there, but like I said, it's for you to want it. And the more you feel like you want it, is the more you will go for it. And in the end, you will get there.
As you've heard, there are varying opinions on this topic across our country. There is a need for more BAME women in positions of leadership in British politics. I'm not just talking about parliamentary politics, local councils, the GLA, and other political positions within our country. Black, Asian, and minority ethnic women across our country do not feel represented. This is something we must change. We must work together to try and overcome the obstacles preventing BAME women from running. As we've heard, we need to provide resources, mentoring, support. These are some of the key factors that have been lacking and will contribute to a more diverse society for all. BAME women constitute 11.6% of our English population, and only 4% of the House of Commons is of a BAME and woman makeup. This is a reflection of the lack of representation across our country. There are many things that have been done, and there are many things that can still be done. I hope this sparks conversation, and I hope this encourages you to start making the small changes that will eventually change our country. A more representative political makeup sets the standard for the rest of our sectors, from business to television, right through to local institutions. We must start taking initiative. Whether you're a member of a local committee or a civil servant working on our country's policy, let's start working together and let's start bringing dialogue to these taboo subjects. They are no longer taboo subjects on a grassroots level, and neither should they be in the formal institutions across our country. I hope you've enjoyed and taken something from this documentary. I've been Jacqueline Gomes-Neves. Thank you.